Buenas and half a day. This legislature is called to order. If we can please all rise for a prayer to be offered by Senator Underwood.
Okay, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Almighty God, we come before your throne of grace and mercy, Lord, grateful for all the blessings you have bestowed upon us and our island. And we come again, Lord, just to ask you to give us your wisdom, give us your understanding and your knowledge, so that everything that we consider during this session would be according to your will and would benefit your people. Lord, we confess that we often fall short of meeting your will and meeting your standards. But we know that as we humbly come before you, and as you have said in your word, that if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. So we commit to you, Lord, our minds, our hearts, and Lord, our spirits, so that everything that we do here would be pleasing unto you. And we pray all this, Lord, in Jesus' name. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Senator. For the recitation of Inifresi, can I ask Senator Morrison can lead us? Professor Maisa to Karapatehi, Tehu Defendi, Igenenge, Ikutura, Ilengwahi, Iaidi, Ihanam, the Mitano Tamor, Niran Shakwa, Direto, Guinness, Tuasa, Estivo, Fitmaki, Higelu, Dibia, Dani Banderaho, Banderaho. And if I can ask Senator Tom Ada to lead us in the singing of the Guam hymn and Senator Tony Ada in the national anthem. Thank you very much, Senators. And the clerks, please take roll call.
Senator Tom Adda. Senator Tony Adda. Senator Uggan. Senator Blas. Vice Speaker Cruz. Senator Espaldon. Senator McCready. Senator Morrison. Senator Munya Barnes. Senator Respicio. Senator Rodriguez. Senator San Nicolas. Senator Torres. Senator Underwood. Speaker Wampat.
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Thank you very much, Senator Respicio. You recognized for the approval of the legislative journals.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that we approve the legislative journals dated March 17 through 20, 2015, as well as March 30th, 2015, subject to correction.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
There are communications and petitions, and I move that these be appended to today's session journal.
No objection, so ordered.
There are messages from Imagalahan Gohan, and I also move that they be appended to today's session journal,
No objection, so ordered.
as well as reports of standing committees. I move for the same.
No objection, so ordered.
There are no reports of select committees. Under the introduction and first reading of bills, resolutions, and certificates, I'll move under one motion that bill numbers 56-33 COR, bill numbers 57-33 LS, and bill number 58-33 LS, bill numbers 59-33 COR through bill number 85-33 COR, resolution numbers 31-33 LS to resolution number 46-33 LS, resolution numbers 47-33 COR to resolution number 74-33 COR, certificate numbers 12-33 LS to certificate number 14-33 LS, certificate numbers 15-33 COR to certificate number 18-33 COR, certificate numbers 19-33 LS, and certificate numbers 20-33 COR to certificate number 22-33 COR, all be given its first reading.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Thank you. My first motion is any resolution or certificate of congratulatory or condolence in nature that's introduced for the duration of this session period, Madam Speaker, that it be adopted, that all senators be co-sponsors, and that the sponsor works with the clerk and the Legislative Council in the preparation of these documents.
No objection, so ordered.
Under legislative, when I move that those members not yet present for session be
Thank you.
excused. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Hearing no objection, so ordered.
And my customary motion that when we're in the second reading filed, that the speaker shall reorder the agenda to accommodate the sponsors. If in the event that there are any questions or that the sponsors willing to move the bill to the side, and then you'd recognize them when they're available again.
That motion, no objection, so ordered.
Okay, my first motion under legislative concurrence from the committee. I'm sorry, I just received two additional committee reports on confirmations. The first one is from your committee, Madam Speaker. No, it's addressed to you from the Committee on Early Learning, Juvenile Justice, Public Education, and First Generation Initiatives, on Senator Narissa Underwood's report on the nomination of Mr. Francis G. Tovis to serve as Accounting Finance Representative to the Guam Academy Charter Schools for a term of 3 years from the date of confirmation by the Guam Legislature as defined in Section 12108, Chapter 12 of Title 17 GCA, and with her committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that this be placed in the legislative concurrence.
No objection, so ordered.
And from Senator Munya Barnes's committee on the appointment of James P. Furness, the history alternate member for the Guam Historic Preservation Review Board of Directors, and her committees on municipal affairs, tourism, housing, and historic preservation's recommendation to do confirm. I move that this be placed in legislative concurrence.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Okay, so under legislative concurrence, I'll read the following. All have committee reports, they've been filed. The Committee on Transportation, Infrastructure, Lands, Border Protection, Veterans Affairs, and Procurement on the appointment of Conchita D. Batan to serve as a member of the Guam Land Use Commission with Senator Tom Addis Committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
No objections, so ordered.
From the Committee on Finance and Taxation, General Governmental Operations and Youth Development, on the nomination of Anthony C. Blas to serve as the Director of the Department of Administration with Senator Nicholas's committee's recommendation to do confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
No objections, so ordered.
From the Committee on Health, Economic Development, Homeland Security, and Senior Citizens, on the nomination of Edward J. Calvo to serve as a member of the Guam Economic Development Authority Board of Directors with Senator Rodriguez's committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
Hearing no objections, so ordered.
From my Committee on Rules, Federal, Foreign, and Micronesian Affairs, Human and Natural Resources, Election Reform, and Capital District, on the nomination of Stephen Carrera to serve as a member of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency Board of Directors with the recommendation to do confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
So ordered.
From Senator Rodriguez's committee again, on the nomination of George Chu to serve as a member of the Guam Economic Development Authority Board of Directors with the committee's recommendation to do confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
Okay, so ordered.
Again, from Senator Rodriguez's committees, on the appointment of David John to serve as a member of GITA Board of Directors with the committee's recommendation to do confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
So ordered.
From the Committee on Transportation, Infrastructure, Lands, Border Protection, Veterans Affairs, and Procurement, on the nomination of Colonel Roderick R. Leon Guerrero to serve as Adjutant General of the Department of Military Affairs, I move with the committee's recommendation to do confirm that it be
Sorry.
placed in the voting file. Thank you, ma'am. From the same committee, on the nomination of Tay S. Ho to serve as a member of the Guam Land Use Commission with the recommendation to do confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
So ordered.
From the same committee to the same commission, on the nomination of Lawrence S. Rivera with the recommendation to do confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
So ordered.
From your Committee on Higher Education, Culture, Public Libraries, and Women's Affairs, on the nomination of Joaquin S. Santos Jr. to serve as a member of the UOG Board of Regents with your committee's recommendation to do confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
So ordered.
And then now I'll move the ones that we just put on. The committee, Senator Underwood's Committee on Early Learning, Juvenile Justice, Public Education, and First Generation, on the nomination of Mr. Francis G. Tovis to serve as the county representative of the Guam Academy Charter Schools Council with the committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that it be placed in the voting file.
So ordered.
And then from Senator Barnes on the appointment of Mr. Vernis as a history alternate member for the Guam Historic Preservation Review Board of Directors. From this committee's with the recommendation to confirm, I move that it be placed in the voting file.
So ordered.
Okay, I have no further motions at this time or any legislative concurrences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. I'd like to recognize Senator Rodriguez on Bill number 45-33.
Morning, Hafaday, Madam Speaker. And colleagues, I move to place Bill 45-33 as substituted by the committee on the third reading and be allowed to briefly discuss what this bill is about. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Madam Speaker, Bill 45-33 is an act to adopt the rules and regulations governing the issuance of health certificates by amending Article 4 of Division 1, Title 26, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations. What this is, Madam Speaker, is a proposal that was sent down to the legislature by the Department of Public Health and Social Services through the administrative adjudication law. We know that this was done sometime last year where the department sought to make some amendments and some revisions to existing rules and regulations as it deals with the issuance of health certificates. The committee had two public hearings on this, Madam Speaker, because in the first public hearing that we had, we were concerned that really there was no stakeholder input, even after we had sent out notices to the public for them to provide testimony. So what we did after the first hearing, which was very productive, I remember some very good discussions that were had especially from our majority leader, Senator Respicio. There were some sections here, for example, Madam Speaker, I'd like to point out, because I think it's very important, is that the proposal, as it was sent down here, eliminated the provision for public health to be able to issue temporary health certificates. These temporary health certificates are very crucial, especially with events such as village fiestas, events that nonprofit organizations hold from time to time, where food or beverages will be served. And so with the initial proposal to eliminate this temporary health certificates, we asked them, we said, okay, without any stakeholders here, we also looked at their participation during their own public hearing, and we noticed that there really wasn't any input. What the committee did was send out a copy of the bill, the proposed regulations, to as much stakeholders, as much businesses that we felt would be impacted by the revisions to this rules and regulations. And so we literally went to every hotel establishment and provided them a copy of this. And we did, after that, have a follow-up public hearing and also markup session. And what we have in front of us here now, Madam Speaker, is a proposal that really now incorporates the concerns that was brought up during the public hearing, concerns that were brought up by the private sector. I'm happy to report that the temporary health certificate provision is intact. It's still there. However, there are certain conditions that an applicant will have to go through, and that public health is very much willing to be able to provide. Another component of this rules and regs was that housekeepers now in the hotels would be required to obtain health certificates. This was also something was of a concern, because we know the impact this would have to the housekeeping community. We did have the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association involved with this, the second public hearing, and also the revisions that we have here. And so I'm also happy to report that all of the sections that we have here in this version in front of our colleagues today, Madam Speaker, is with input from the community and from the stakeholders. And so now I ask that my colleagues please support this measure and approve it. If we don't approve it, then the original submission of the proposed rules and regulations would then be adopted sometime in May, and we really don't want that to happen. We want to be able to adopt a version that takes into consideration what our community has offered. So I ask my colleagues to please support this measure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Welcome, Senator. On the motion, does anyone would like to speak? Senator Frank Blas Jr., you recognize?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning. Madam Speaker, I actually have a question with regards to a portion of the bill, and I would like to inquire if the author can yield to the question that I have.
Okay.
The question basically stems from
Senator, one moment, please. Senator Rodriguez, there's going to be a question for you, so I would like for you to, okay, please, you may proceed with your
Thank you,
question.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, actually, it pertains to the strikeout found in page 13 of the bill. And it's reference to the strikeout, I guess, of massage therapy. I noticed, though, that in the earlier portion of the bill, that there is the reference to therapeutic massage found on page 8. So we have a reference to a therapeutic massage establishment, but we strike out the definition of massage therapy on page 13. And I just wanted to know whether, well, I mean, what was the rationale, the reason behind either the inclusion of massage, therapeutic massage on page 8, or the strikeout of massage therapy on page 13? It seems like we're missing a definition if we are going to do that. Or we've included a definition that's not necessary if we were to do that.
Senator Rodriguez, do you yield to the question? Page 8, I think, is a D, subsection
Right.
D.
And then page 13, the strikeout section O.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I'm going to try to answer as best I could, and I think the question, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, is that why are we striking out the definition of massage therapy on page 13?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
And so if you, page 16 now has a sub-item B that is defined as a therapeutic massage establishment, which now really takes the what is being deleted in page 13 and incorporates that in this sub-item V. So it may just be a restructuring of the lettering and numbering.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, then how does page 8, the definition of therapeutic massage establishment, deal with page 16? Can we take a 1-minute break? Recess,
Okay,
please.
we're going to take a minute recess. The legislature is back in session. Senators, I understand that there's continuous discussion with legal counsel, and if I'd like to suggest that other than Senator Frank Blas, who have some questions, that if any one of you also should have other questions, that you please bring it before Senator Rodriguez and legal counsel. And the senator has asked if we can go ahead and set this aside to be able to address some of those concerns. So, objections and so ordered. Senator Rodriguez on Bill 52-33. Senator?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 52 as substituted by the author on the third reading.
52, 1 second. 52, Renee. Senator Kent, I'm sorry. So your motion is to place Bill 52 as substituted by the author.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 52 is an act to amend subsections 80.113B of Chapter 80, Division 4, Title 10 GCA, to provide for entry into the classified service of the Government of Guam for allied health providers employed as healthcare administrators at the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. I thank the Vice Speaker's committee for having a hearing on this expeditiously and also reporting it out. This legislation really has two parts to it, Madam Speaker. The first part of the legislation provides for language now that would give the hospital administration statutory authority to place certain positions at the hospital into the classified service. What we have gathered through our discussions with them and through additional research is that the hospital is classifying certain positions, such as those employed as allied health providers, as associate administrators for clinical operations and medical services, therefore not allowing them to enter into the classified service. And we know that at least for 6 of these positions have never been able to fill a permanent administrator for these positions because really of the uncertainty. They come and go. The CEOs of the hospital come and go, and so there's really no desire for anyone who takes on these acting positions to take on these roles because of the fact that there's no entry into the classified service. And so what we have here is having language that specifically includes these positions, and I'll read it here, Madam Speaker. It's found on page 2. These are the chief respiratory therapists, chief hospital radiology technologist, chief hospital pharmacist, administrative laboratory services, chief of rehabilitative services, and administrator for hospital food services. Most of these positions, Madam Speaker, have been held for over 5 years in an acting capacity, and we feel that it's really just time to be able to include these individuals into the classified service of the government. The second part of this legislation, Madam Speaker, it provides the Board of Trustees some flexibility. We've, in discussions with the hospital administration, we know that in short-term employments with doctors and even CEOs or CFOs, a big chunk of what the hospital expends is the retirement contribution, which is about 30+%. And so what this does is that if they do have short-term hires that really don't have any won't be really vested into the retirement system, that it gives the hospital an option to be able to look at alternatives besides having to expend that 30+% into contribution to the retirement fund. And so I ask my colleagues, Madam Speaker, to please support this measure, and I'd like to add the Vice Speaker as a co-sponsor to this measure, if there's no objection.
On the motion to add the Vice Speaker, no objections, so ordered. On the motion, is there anyone who would like to speak on the main motion? Senator St. Nicholas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just going through the bill, Madam Speaker, on page 2, starting on line 18, that subsection 1 there, I just would like to read it and then perhaps discuss and pose questions to the author with respect to it. And it reads, for the purposes of this subsection and at the board's discretion, the board shall have the authority to determine and establish the percentage of retirement contribution to be appropriate and which shall be equally applied and provided to all short-term hospital employees with a contractual term of less than 5 years in a retirement plan other than the Government of Guam Retirement Fund. I'm trying to understand here. So we're basically giving, this is a question I'd like to pose to the author if he would yield. We're giving the board the authority to make retirement contributions outside of the Government of Guam Retirement Fund? Is that what this subsection is doing?
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. And yes, Madam Speaker, that's what the intent is to look for if need be, because we, in discussions with the hospital administration, when they do hire short-term, let's say physicians or specialty managers, the benefits really sometimes don't in their negotiations with these individuals it's not really an attraction for them to be provided membership into the Government of Guam Retirement Fund, because some of them, or most of them, maybe really, Madam Speaker, are not residents of Guam or don't intend to be here for a long period of time. And so if the board does in their negotiations with a potential employee, will now have an option, will have the authority to look at different options if contribution to a retirement, to a 401k is something that is needed between them and this short-term applicant.
Senator, was he able to answer your question?
Yes, Madam Speaker, he was, and I have some concerns of that section. First of all, we have employees in the government who are hired on a contractual basis who are not able to avail of a specially negotiated percentage contribution to their GovGuam retirement fund, much less a specially negotiated retirement contribution to a third-party provided retirement fund. I'm not even sure if the government, in any example, contributes retirement contributions to its employees, contractual or classified or unclassified. I don't think the government contributes retirement contributions to any third-party provider outside of the Government of Guam Retirement Fund. And if I could be enlightened otherwise, that would help me to understand why we need to include this section. But I'm concerned that we're going to be providing a benefit for hospital contractual employees, short-term, less than 5 years. If your contract is for less than 5 years, you're going to get this benefit. But what about every other Government of Guam employee who has a contract that's less than 5 years? Are we going to also allow for their boards or for line agencies who hire these contractual employees to make a retirement contribution to a third party outside of the Government of Guam Retirement Fund, a contribution to them? That's concerning for me. What's also concerning for me is the fact that on line 20 it says the percentage of retirement contribution to be appropriate, which means that the board can technically say, you know what, we're going to pay you $100,000 and we're going to match you 100% of whatever you contribute to your retirement fund. So if they contribute $50,000 to their SEP IRA, $55,000 or whatever, and they have a 100% match, then the government's going to put in another $55,000 match into their retirement fund. And so what we may be creating here is it's a very attractive benefit, don't get me wrong. I mean, anybody who wants to beef up their retirement for a couple more years can come to Guam and get a very, very, attractive retirement fund contribution match to their own private retirement that they have. I think that might be overextending the benefit, Madam Speaker, and I'm concerned about equity to all of our government of Guam employees and to all contract employees as well, short-term contract employees. We hire them all the time, Madam Speaker, in the Department of Education as teachers, for example. We have a lot of contract teachers. And so I'm concerned about this Section 1. I think that it might be too much of an authorization for the board to be able to determine at will how much they want to match or contribute to the retirement for these individuals, and to do so to a third-party retirement provider outside of the government of Guam. I mean, the only time that I can feel comfortable with that would be if we're doing it for Social Security, but if we're doing it for any other third-party provider, it might not even be a local provider. That's an area. Those are multiple areas of concern that I have with this particular Section 1. And just to kind of talk about where the whole bill is going, I like the whole bill. I mean, there's a lot of good things in it. And Section C here, starting on line 10, does make it very clear that they're going to be allowing for hospital employees in the classified service, non-contractual unclassified hospital employees, and I think it's supposed to say a long-term hospital employee with a contractual term of more than 5 years shall be eligible to continue to be or to become a member of the Government of Guam Retirement Fund. It's just this one subsection that's creating a whole new special exception for contractual employees who have a contract that's less than 5 years. And so I think that everybody should be on the same page, whether you're less than 5 years, whether you're 5 years or more, whether you're contractual or classified or unclassified. We have one retirement fund, and I think that everybody should be contributing to the same one. And if that one retirement fund is creating recruitment problems, then in the contract, the employee can perhaps opt out of any contributions to the retirement fund. But then for us to go a step further and say, we're going to contribute to whatever retirement you currently have, and we're going to contribute a percentage that might be more than what we're giving to our current employees, that's concerning. Because right now we match our current employees 5%. But with this section, the match can be anywhere from 1 to 100%. So I'd like to request a recess, Madam Speaker, to confer with the author to see where we go from here with subsection 1.
We're going to take a brief recess. I know we left off with Senator San Nicolas, so, but you're going to yield it back to the author. Senator Rodriguez, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I really thank you very much, Senator San Nicolas, for bringing up this point. And so, I'm going to strike Section 2 in its entirety, but just to give a little bit of background is that the intent here is not to be able to use this as a recruitment tool, but it really is a way for the hospital to kind of control some of its costs because of what they're spending now on retirement contributions for short-term employees. And so, but I understand this is an issue that should be dealt with separately in a maybe standalone, and I'll work with the good senator and our colleagues to be able to address this at a later time. So I move to strike Section 2 in its entirety.
On that motion, hearing no objections, so ordered. Senator Nicholas, you still have the floor. You're good. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on the main motion? There being none. On the motion then to send Bill 52-32 through the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Senator Frank Ogden, Bill number 56-33. Come on, note that. Bill 59-33, Senator Mary Torres. You want me to move on to the next? Senator T.C. Ada on Bill 62-33.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that Bill 62-33 be moved to the third reading file.
Is it as amended by the committee, or is it?
It's the Bill 62-33 LS as amended by the committee.
All right, you may proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what Bill 62-33 does is it just brings further clarification as to timelines for when professionals such as your engineers, your architects, and the licensed surveyors are eligible to take their professional examinations. So the problem right now is that under the current law, an engineer is not must pass the fundamentals exam, and then is required to have 4 years of work experience, and then after they've completed those two requirements, then they can sit down and take the professional engineer's exam, and that then will basically make them professionals and are able to put the suffix PE after their names. Well, so right now then, the way the law is written is that the engineer intern, after he graduates from college, is then able to take the fundamentals exam. After he has taken that, then he can start accruing that 4 years of practical experience, and then be able to sit down professional engineer's exam. But what's happening in reality is that some of these individuals, they would graduate from college and basically, get hired by some engineering firm, and sometimes, they just go so deep into their work that they kind of defer taking the fundamentals exam. So what we have now is some individuals who have worked, like, for example, 8 years, but none of those 8 years would be counted towards the requirements. So instead, now that they have time to sit down and take the fundamentals exam, they will take that, and then they can start accruing the 4 years of practical experience that's required. What this is basically saying is, once the individual has graduated from college, he can take the fundamentals exam after that, and then and if they're working right now, you know, when the clock starts for when that 4-year experience begins, really can begin at any time. So it's not, you know, one of those sequential sort of thing. Take the fundamentals exam, then the clock begins for the practical experience, then take the final exam. Instead, the clock can start immediately after graduation for the practical experience, and then somewhere along the line there, take the fundamentals exam, and once you've accrued the 4 years of practical experience, then they can sit down for the final exam. So this bill, we've actually had the appeals board sit down and took a look at this and updated the requirements for when the clock begins, and that's what this is all about. When does the clock begin for your engineers, as well as updating basically the rites of passage for your architects, as well as for your land surveyors. So this bill was fully endorsed by members of the appeals board. Thank you.
On the motion, Senator Frank Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I applaud the author of the bill, and I agree with him that it provides some clarity, so that the individuals who want to desire to carry these certifications, put the initials behind their name, do so with qualifications. That said, and hopefully to make the bill a little stronger here, I have a question that I'd like the author to yield to, and actually a couple of questions. And one of the first questions I have is relative to page 3. Basically, lines 5 and 6 is having passed the current form of examination, the fundamentals of engineering. Not recognizing that this is an amendment to what currently is held in statute, and so there may be other portions of the statute that this is trying to amend. But for point of clarification here is a current form of examination. Would it be necessary, would it be wise, prudent to be able to basically qualify that current form of examination? And when I say qualification is to where this examination, who proctors this examination, who provides this examination, so that you don't have an individual who takes that current form of examination elsewhere and satisfies that criteria. So I don't know whether it would be prudent on our part to be able to qualify, when you say current form of examination, where that examination or who administered that examination or what is recognized.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Actually, the national organization that your engineers basically subscribe to is on page 2 there, you'll see on line 4, reference is made to the NCEES. That's the National Council of something Engineers Society. But basically, that's the national organization that develops these exams. And also then, basically then your appeals board here is the one that administers it for them, but it's a national exam. In the same way that that this organization, through insofar as institutions are concerned, institutions are recognized through the accredited by the EAC and ABET or the equivalent. Again, I forget right offhand what those initials stand for, but everything goes to a national body.
And that's it, Madam
National-
Speaker.
National
I-
Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying, NCES, EES. Senator Lawson, was he able to answer your question?
He was, and maybe an amendment to the language found on page 3 is, and having passed the current form of examination in the fundamentals of engineering, as recognized by
NCEES?
ABET?
The EAC/ABET or the
Right.
equivalent. So engineering curriculums basically, get accredited.
Right, but
Right.
the exam as recognized by,
The exam is
EAC.
recognized by the NCEES.
and that's what I want to make sure of is, Madam Speaker, is that, if you read this, I just don't want, if the true intent is that the exam that is going to be recognized is an exam that is recognized by, or an exam that's going to be accepted as an exam that is recognized by EAC, ABET, that we make that specific in this language here.
If the senator has a question about that, maybe we can set this aside. Let me get back with appeals board, and within the next, and then tomorrow we could probably pick it up and make sure that that it is the NCEES that accredits that basically governs the type of examinations, whereas the EAC/ABET basically are the institutions that accredit engineering curriculum. So I'll get that straightened out, but I understand what the senator.
And I appreciate that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I recognize and I applaud again the author in trying to move this legislation. It is necessary in some cases so that engineering, is a vital, a vital position in infrastructure development, and we just want to make sure that we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's so that there is no loophole, there is no, it is succinct with what the true intention is. So, and I appreciate the author wanting to get back so that we can clarify the exam, who is going to actually, what exam are we going to be actually using, so that the certification is good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Senator Ada, you're requesting then that we set it aside
Correct.
until you're able to come
Yes, ma'am.
back with some answers.
Okay.
Okay, so
Sure.
no objections to that, so ordered. Mr. Vice Speaker, 66-33.
Madam Speaker, I ask that Bill 66-33, as substituted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudications, be placed on the third reading file, and I ask for an opportunity to speak.
You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and colleagues, as you may know, last month the Department of Revenue and Taxation announced the completion of the reassessment of real property and the issuance of new real property tax statements to all property owners on island. As a result of the reassessment, it's been determined that the Territorial Education Facilities Fund, or the real property tax, should increase from about what we were thinking about 27 million this year, 27 million to 35 million, 32 depending on which interview you see John on, it's either 32 or 35. But at any rate, there was an increase in the amount. Bill 66 attempts to capture about $1.1 million for the establishment of a pilot program for the pre-K program within the Guam Department of Education. Madam Speaker, I want to assure you that your appropriations that you had in Public Law 32-219 or 120 have been addressed in this bill. It's all on page 5 and 6 to make sure that everything that you had set aside. You remember in that public law, Madam Speaker, you would ask that a certain amount of money be set aside for the student center, for community college and territorial librarian and a whole bunch of other things. I didn't touch those amounts. The difference is just about $1.2 million, and we've set it aside for personnel of about 160,000 and about 980,000 for facilities or renovations in classrooms in the 4 pilot project schools. I wanted to make sure that GDOE knew that it had this money this early in the year, so it can start planning to make sure that by the start of the fiscal year, not fiscal year, the school year in August, that they would be able to start at the programs in the 4 schools. Just walking everybody through it, on page 1, it just increases the appropriation to Guam Department of Education by about $3 million. On page 2, it increases the personnel object category about 160,000 and increases operations by about 900,000. And then on page 3, it just lists what Guam Department of Education had asked for their startup funding for the early childhood education program of 982,000. And then in section 3, it protects all of the, everything that you had set aside for in Public Law 32-219 to make sure that that hadn't been touched. All we did was we added that the amount that's going to go to the education, for the pre-K would be set aside. The reason why I jumped on this, Madam Speaker, as early as possible is I didn't want anybody else to think that it was available for anything else. I know that you and Senator Tony Atta have been, in the previous legislature, been very supportive and in trying to get early education started. I also remember our former colleague, Senator Aileen Yamashita, pushing for it. During the budget hearing last year, all 3 of us jumped all over the director about the fact that he hadn't provided for any funds within his budget for pre-K. I know the Guam Legislature did set aside $75,000 of Public Health and Social Services for a project coordinator to put this together, but the Guam Department of Education on its own decided it could do without a project coordinator. It's by itself determined that it would have 4 pilot schools. It put together a program and a budget, and we're trying with Bill 66 to make sure that it has the requisite funds to get this started at the earliest possible date. I ask for my colleagues' assistance in making sure that this becomes a reality for our young children. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. On the motion, Senator Underwood, you recognize?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really welcome this proposal because we all know that any type of intervention for our students, especially those who are at risk, is best, is really effective early on in their school years. So setting this aside and supporting early childhood education programs is really welcome. But I want to make note that this is a pilot program, and a lot of times when we have a pilot program, we fail to develop a program evaluation so that we can really determine whether the pilot program is meeting its goals and objectives. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that for the purposes of accountability and also just research and ensuring that we make sound decisions and whether to expand the program, given that it's a pilot, it's a test program, that we would include a section that will require the Department of Education to conduct a formative and a summative evaluation of the pilot program, and for that to be, the results of that to be reported to the legislature on an annual basis over the next 3 years. I'm not sure at this point how many years we're planning to pilot the program. Is it just 1 year? Is it 2 years or 3 years? But usually for us to determine the effectiveness of a program, especially an educational program, we would have to pilot it at least for 3 years before we expand. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to include an amendment that would include language here. Maybe it's under, would be under C, after that's B, that the Department of Education will conduct a formative and summative evaluation of the pilot program and report to the legislature the results of the pilot program annually over the next 3 years before the expansion of the program be considered.
We're going to take a brief recess, and can you please put that in writing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a brief recess. The legislature's back in session. We left off with an amendment to be proffered by Senator Underwood, and I think everyone should have a copy on your desk. Senator Underwood, then on your amendment.
So, Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I am proposing that we would include C, and that the superintendent of the Guam Department of Education shall conduct a formative and summative evaluation of the early childhood program, pilot program, over a period of 3 years. The evaluation results shall be submitted annually to the legislature and shall be considered prior to an expansion of the program. Expansion or continuation of the program.
Continuation, okay. So you want to put expansion / continue,
Or continuation of the
okay,
program.
Or continuation.
Yes.
On the amendment? No objections? So ordered.
Thank you,
Senator.
Madam Speaker.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak on Bill 66? Senator Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of Bill 6633, authored by Vice Speaker Cruz. And I think it is important that we do have a source of funding for this preschool, pilot preschool. You know, during the public hearing, Madam Speaker, I brought it up to the superintendent that, you know, there was a question whether DOE had the legal authority to establish a pre-K program, being that statute only said K through 12. And he did assure us that he did have the legal authority. And it was back in 2005 when then Superintendent Juan Flores with legal counsel Fred Nishihara did mention that they did not have the legal authority back then. So what happened from 2005 to 2015, I'm not sure. And I tried to correct that with Bill 17931. However, we were only able to get it publicly heard but not reported out. So what I wanted to do is that to ensure that, and to give DOE the benefit of doubt that they said they do have the legal authority, I just wanted to protect the funds that we do put in and for the pre-K program. And I wanted to do an amendment that will ensure that in the event that they come back to us and tell us that they don't have the legal authority to establish a pre-K and that we need to give them that authority, that the funding stay in place and they cannot transfer it or use it for any other purpose. So that when we do give them the authority, they can't come back to us and say, well, we spent that money, so can you appropriate us another set of funding for it? So if you can just give me a 1 minute recess, I got with legal counsel to come up with the amendment so that we can just ensure that it'll be for that only purpose of establishing a pre-K program.
Okay, we're going to take a brief recess. Session. Senator Ada, with your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my amendment will be on line 26, page 3. And it'll be added to the following sentence of line 16. After program, this allocation shall not be subject to transfer by the governor or GDOE. That's a very simple amendment. It's just to ensure that the funding stays in place, that in the event, like I said, they don't have the authority, that they don't use that funding for any other purpose but the pilot pre-K program.
Okay, on the amendment. that this allocation shall not be subject to transfer by the governor or GDOE. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senator. Senator Nicholas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I had a question for the author, if he would yield, with respect to page 3, subsection B.
Before you do, Mr. Vice Speaker, there's going to be a question for you on page 3, subsection B, line 22 to 26. Okay, can you proceed?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is just to ensure that I'm clearly understanding what section B is going to do. That is basically going to increase the operation budget for the Department of Education for fiscal year 2014 by $1.1 million. Is that accurate?
Mr. Vice Speaker, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker, and the answer is yes. For a combination of things, the personnel cost and the capital outlay. The appropriation in 32-219 are all the appropriations that that we had set aside for the charter schools in B. All the rest of these are not additional appropriations. It's just taking into account everything that's currently in the Budget Act and its subsequent amendments, all in one place. That's why on page 4, all of the things that you had in your 32-120, where you set aside all those funds, is listed. I didn't want anybody to think that I was deleting any of those. I'm leaving everything that's currently in the budget law, just adding the parts that I've underlined or crossed through.
Senator, was able to answer your question?
But the B is not a new 1.2, that was for the iLearn and for other things that was happening with charter schools. That's currently in the law already. I'm just adding on, if you go to page 2, I increased the operations category by 2.3 for everything else that's being done in DOE. I took into account the increase and appropriated the difference.
Senator?
So, just to be clear, then this 1.1 million is an open-ended appropriation to DOE for operations.
Hold on a second. 32-219 is the charter school amendments that we added at the end of the year. Remember when we had to fund for iLearn and the additional amount for GACs? So that's not a new appropriation. That was in 32-219. It's stated there. It's clear on the very bottom line. It's Public Law 32-219. And if you go to 32-219, it's for the charter schools. The $500,000 that they needed for iLearn and the $600,000 that was necessary for the increase in GACs.
Okay, I'm just trying to balance the bill. So that 1.1 million is new money that we're appropriating to the charter schools?
No.
Okay. So
1.1, there's two sets of 1.1. 32-219 was the 1.9 that was necessary to increase the GDOE budget to address iLearn and GACs. So Section B is already law, 32219. I'm not adding anything else. All I'm adding is just really the amount just for the pilot program, which is an increase of 165,000 in personnel, 84,000 in operations, and 732,000 in capital outlay, and it's set in the different sections. The increases that we crossed out on line 20, 24 on page 2. We've amended the budget law several times. And all I'm trying to do is make sure that I leave everything in the budget law that's currently there. I don't want to just do the cross-throughs, and then have anybody think that I've deleted the increase for charter schools or deleted all of the appropriations that you had set aside in 32120, Madam Speaker. That's why there's a whole page 4 and 5 of all the things that you wanted set aside previously.
Okay, so if I could just walk it backwards then, Madam Speaker. We're doing the 982,000 for the universal pre-K, the preschool, the pilot.
Yes.
But we're increasing the TEFF by $2+ million. So where is the other? Where's the difference? The difference of the increase in TEF minus the universal pre-K comes out to over $1 million. I was assuming it was that 1.1, but I'm hearing that it's not. So where's the difference? No, it's not. Okay, so where's the difference of the projected increase? Is it included in the bill, or we still have not appropriated that?
I don't think I didn't increase any other additional appropriation.
No, but on page...
We'll take a short break.
page-
Let me
yeah,
just find
page-
out from
yeah.
OFB what I...
Yeah, page 3, line 2. Anyway, take a brief recess. The legislature is back in session. Senator Nicholas, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So just for the record, it was clarified that this 1.1 million on page 3 is to go to restore an amount to the Department of Education that was appropriated for charter schools after the budget was passed in October. And so in order for the Department of Education to be whole again as to the amounts that we appropriated back in October, this 1.1 million is being provided to them as part of the increase in the Territorial Educational Facilities Fund as a result of the revaluation. So that being the case, Madam Speaker, I have no further concerns with the bill. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the reply from the sponsor.
You're welcome. On the motion, Senator Frank Bloss, you recognize.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm following the discussion correctly here. And this was just basically to show there was, first off, there was an increase to the operations object category. And in section 3, page 2 is, as a result of that increase, a new section 17 was added, and nothing more. My question then is, how does section 4, starting on page 4, how does section 4 fit into this?
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, I do, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Section 4 is Public Law 32-120.
So that question, Madam Speaker, in recognizing if there is no amendment to this, is it necessary to be in this Section 4 necessary to be in the bill?
Senator.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we passed the budget law last year, subsequent to it, we passed 120 and 219. 120 had everything that's in Section 4, pages 4 and 5 in the bill.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Section through, and so I didn't want, especially you, Madam Speaker, to think that I was taking all the appropriations that you had set aside for all those 5 or 6 different projects. So I wanted to make sure that when this bill went through, it had everything that's is or should be in the budget section of the Department of Education all in one place, so that you can see everything that's been appropriated to GDOE on these 5 pages, including everything that you asked for in Public Law 32-120 and everything that we had set aside or taken from DOE or subtracted from DOE's operations to meet the shortfall in charter schools. So it's all there in one place. We just put it all together because I didn't want anybody to think that I was taking their money.
So with that, Madam Speaker, and for the purposes of clarity and recognizing there is no amendments for Section 4 of a bill of a law that that's already in place. I move to delete Section 4. It's already law. There's no amendment.
Yeah, I mean, it was copied just the way that you had it. That's why if you look at Section 4, it starts off with legislative intent.
Right.
But you see,
legislative intent on Section 4 is completely out of place. But it's just, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have you jumping at me.
But if you look at the bill in its entirety, you have the Section 4, and then on page 6 you have the Section 5.
Understood.
Which is amended. So,
Understood.
Understood.
I recognize that, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
But for the purposes of, so that if we're not making any changes to Section 4, Section
Yeah,
4 stands
I
already as it is.
And I think that, like the Vice Speaker had said, it was just to make sure that.
Understood, Madam Speaker, but, you know,
To
there is no...
reassure the
And I'm sure that we got the
author of
assurances.
32-120.
And I'm sure that the author of 32-120 has received the assurances.
Yes,
I
I
submit to
understand.
that. I don't see the necessity of having Section 4 of
understand.
this bill, so I move to strike Section 4 of the bill.
And I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the fact that the Vice Speaker just wanted to make sure that there were
And
no
I understand
changes.
that full well.
So-
I understand
And
that full
since
well.
it's not being affected at all, or
Okay.
being amended.
Okay, so I move to strike
on
Section 4.
The motion then to delete Section 4 in its entirety.
Madam Speaker, I'd have no objection to that. I would just like the support of my colleagues to give legal counsel the authority to make whatever requisite amendments she believes are necessary
Regarding
to
Section
make
4?
sure that
Okay.
I don't repeat, or more importantly, that I don't delete any previous appropriation
All right.
that you guys have done.
So moved. So moved.
So, okay, so you're right, so
Right.
you have no
Understood.
objection then to that,
Understood.
on the motion proffered by the Vice Speaker, that legal counsel then looking at 4 and 5?
Yes, ma'am.
To see then what would be the best way to be able to reframe it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
So on that motion, objection, so ordered. Thank you. So, is there any, I don't have anybody else to speak on 66, Mr. Vice Speaker. Send it down on the motion then to send 66-33 as substituted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication to third reading file without any objections, so ordered. I understand that Senator Tom Ada, you are ready then to respond to 66-32 on the question by Senator Blas.
Yes, Madam Speaker. A couple of things. First of all, I indicated earlier that the local appeals board, which is the governing body that oversees the licensing of our engineers, our architects, and the land surveyors, that they really come under the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying. That's what NCEES stands for. Now, to the question that Senator Blas had about being more specific.
You may proceed. We're just going to bring the other two
about
members
being more
in.
specific as to the form of examination that is to be taken, which is mentioned in page 3 on lines 6 and line 21. The question was, having passed a current form of examination, and in speaking to a appeals board member, it was recommended that the amendment there should be having passed a current form of examination, comma, recognized by the appeals board, comma, in the fundamentals of engineering. Since they are the governing body, I mean, you could come in and say, well, I took this exam here. Well, we don't recognize it. So really the final determination should be left with appeals. So I would like to make that amendment on line 6 to then read, having passed a current form of examination, comma, recognized by the appeals board, comma, in the fundamentals of engineering. And the same amendment will go on line 21, and which will then read, passed a current form of examination, comma, recognized by the appeals board, comma, in the fundamentals of engineering. I hope that answers my colleague's question.
So Senator Blas, since that was your question, then was the question answered? Okay, so on the amendment then proffered by Senator Ada, that on page 3, line 6, afterward the word examinations, to write the words in recognized by the appeals board, then comma, then continue on in the fundamentals of engineering, and the same language for line 21, again after examination, to add the words recognized by the appeals board, comma, in the fundamentals. So for both of them, same language, no objections, so ordered. on Senator Ada's motion then to send 62, oh, you do have one more question on this? Oh, okay. So Senator, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, then on page 6, line 24, and in Guam land matters, is Guam land matters a subject or is, I noticed that it's all,
Oh, capitalized.
right.
And
So-
Senator Ada,
What line was that?
and page
Line-
6, line 24?
Page 6,
where
line 24.
Guam land matters are all, I mean,
is-
Guam understood, but land
Is that a
matters.
program?
Yeah, that's a specific now. I mean,
Specific program?
No, what do you call that? It's not a, well, this, we're talking about now the exam by the surveying, by the licensed surveyors. So the examination is yeah, as prescribed in the Bible. Yeah, Guam land matters, that's fine.
But my question is
The
that,
question, yes.
is that a specific program or is that pertaining to land matters pertaining to Guam?
Land matters pertaining to Guam.
So is it necessary then to have land matters capitalized? Because it appears to be a specific program.
Well, I don't understand what difference it makes whether it's capital G, capital L, capital M. I don't,
I think the question is that, is there a specific document that's called Guam
Guam
Land
Land Matters.
Matters? Or is it then that any land matter that, in Guam, of course, that will be part of that
well, I mean,
licensure?
if, I don't see that it's gonna change anything substantively if we said, if we
Okay, so
use lowercase.
would both of you then be satisfied if, again, in this particular case for legal counsel, to then make sure then that, you know, Guam Land Matters, whether Land Matters is a specific document or not, and if whether it would really make a difference in terms of its significance in this section?
Fine.
Is that okay with both
Yes,
of you?
that's fine.
All right. Thank you then, Senators. Legal counsel then will address that. So no objections to order, at least with both of the gentlemen. Senator Blas, I know you still have the floor. Okay, so on the matter then to send 62-33 to the third reading file, no objections, so ordered. Let me see, we're going to go ahead and just take that recess now so that you'll be able to have lunch before the meeting this afternoon with the Admiral. So the legislature then, no, you'll be able to provide your own transportation or you can carpool. Originally that was offered, but some of the senators felt that they would prefer to just go on their own. Let me just take a brief recess. The legislature is back in session. Senators, I know we have the meeting this afternoon with the Admiral, so we are going to recess. And then tomorrow we have the meeting at the GMH, the boardroom tomorrow morning as well. So we will recess until tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay? So we are in recess.